A quiet shift has actually begun in West Africa, ladies and gentlemen, and guess what? It is actually already moving serious with money across borders. Ghana has actually made a sovereign or independence of decision. That particular decision is actually changing trade route. It is actually changing partnerships, and of course, it is actually changing influence in the region. And the numbers involved are very huge and big. Recent reports point to a loss of over 125 billion CFA francs, okay, from some regional ports after Burkina Faso redirected a major share of its import through Ghanaian port. This was not random. It followed new cooperation between Ghana and of course the AES countries. Ladies and gentlemen, guess what? The impact was actually immediate or instant. Cargo moved, revenue was shifted, attention turned toward Accra, Ghana. Some critics or enemies reacted fast. They were actually not happy. They actually expected Ghana to actually take a different path. They believed Ghana will actually block or limit cooperation with AES states or countries. Ladies and gentlemen, that didn't actually happen. Ghana chose engagement. Ghana actually chose trade. Of course, Ghana also chose diplomacy. This decision didn't actually come from emotion. Ladies and gentlemen, it came from strategy. Ghana actually began strengthening ties with Burkina Faso and of course other AES members through trade and of course security discussions. Guess what? Talks deepened. Okay, agreements actually followed, and of course trade channels began to actually adjust. Now, at the center of this particular shift, ladies and gentlemen, is Burkina Faso's leadership under Captain Ibrahim Traore. Okay, specifically, his government started redirecting significant import flows toward Ghanaian port. That movement created new income streams for Ghana specifically. Port activity increased, transport corridors became busier, customs revenues actually rose. The numbers speak clearly. When import move, money actually flows. Ladies and gentlemen, when trade route change, power balances shift. Okay, this is where the story becomes larger than simple diplomacy. Meanwhile, some Western aligned observers reportedly expected Ghana, okay, the whole of Ghana, to distance itself from AES policies. In other words, West African states, strict measures had actually limited AES trade access. Ghana didn't actually take that route. Instead, Ghana expanded cooperation as containers began arriving at Ghanaian port in greater numbers. It became clear that this was not symbolic cooperation. It was economic action. It was measurable. It was also deliberate or very intentional. And this is only the beginning of the shift. There are security talks. There are cross-border system being built. There are long-term plans, okay, that could actually reshape regional trade for years, ladies and gentlemen. Now, before we actually go deeper into this with you, precious family, if you actually value clear and of course responsible analysis like this on African development, please just take a moment to actually like this video, subscribe, and turn on notification bell. This will actually give us the energy to keep on analyzing with you every single day. Now, the focus moves to what was actually officially signed, what was actually promised, and of course how this cooperation became formal policy between Ghana and of course Burkina Faso. So the trade didn't actually happen accidentally or coincidentally. It followed structured talks between senior officials from both countries. Burkina Faso's Prime Minister James Emmanuel, okay, met with a Ghanaian delegation led by Foreign Minister Samuel Okudzeto Ablaka. These were not symbolic meetings. They actually produced signed agreement or deals. One agreement allows mutual recognition of national driving licenses. This may actually sound so small. Yes, it is not. It makes cross-border transport faster and of course easier. Trucks move without delay. Goods reach port smoothly. Time is actually money in trade. Another agreement created a cross-border cooperation framework. This supports smoother coordination between border authorities. It reduces friction. It increases efficiency. Every hour saved at a border crossing protects business value. There was also an agreement on joint disaster management. This ensures both countries can actually respond quickly to emergencies that may actually affect trade corridors. Stability supports commerce. Security cooperation was actually expanded. The two states or countries agreed, okay, to strengthen intelligence sharing, training, and of course coordination against armed threat. Stable borders protect economic corridors. Investors watch stability closely. Now, there was also cooperation to combat or fight drug trafficking. This improves border integrity, clean trade routes, build international confidence. This agreement or deals created a foundation. Okay, once that foundation was actually set, Burkina Faso redirected a large share of its import towards Ghana's port. This is where the financial impact became clear. So when goods that once passed through other regional ports now enter through Tema and of course Takoradi port, fees, handling was no charges, storage was no devices, fuel was no sales, trafficking was no services, and of course custom was no duties, all benefits Ghana's no economy. This is how large figures like 125 billion CFA francs, okay, shift from one economy to another. Captain Ibrahim Traore was the government or leadership didn't actually was sent cash directly, ladies and gentlemen. The transfer happened through trade was no flows, through was no logistics, okay, through business decisions, through sovereign was no economic was no alignment. Meanwhile, some Western partners, ladies and gentlemen, or observers reportedly preferred Ghana to follow a stricter regional approach that limited AES trade was no access. Similar to policies seen elsewhere in the region, Ghana did not actually adopt that path. Ghana focused on partnership. This steady was no decision created a clear was no signal. Ghana will actually not block its northern was no neighbor, which is Burkina Faso. Ghana will actually expand cooperation instead. As trade was volumes was increased, regional observers began to actually understand that this was a strategic repositioning, and there was still another development ahead that will actually deepen this shift even further. The unexpected shift came when trade data began reflecting sustained volume increases rather than temporary spikes. This showed that the redirection of import was not short term. It was actually policy. Burkina Faso continued, routing significant goods through Ghanaian port. The flow remained steady. That confirmed long-term cooperation. This gradual pattern revealed the deeper meaning of the 125 billion CFA franc figure. It represented cumulative economic movement. It showed how sovereignty decisions reshape market. The reaction follows quickly. Ghana's officials described the cooperation as regional solidarity and of course smart economic planning. They actually emphasized mutual benefits and of course stability. Burkina Faso's leadership presented the agreement or deals, okay, as political steps toward independence in trade partnerships. This highlighted shared geography and of course shared interest. Public discussions across West Africa, ladies and gentlemen, reflected mixed views. Some praised Ghana for protecting its economic interest. Okay, others actually questioned the broader regional balance. Yet official communication remained calm and of course diplomatic. Institutions focused on implementation. Transport operators adjusted logistics schedules. Business groups actually explored new supply chain options. The lesson became clear. Trade choices shape influence. Border policies shape revenue. Independence decisions can actually carry measurable consequences. The deeper impact of this development goes beyond one financial figure. It reflects a new phase of regional decision making. Ghana demonstrated that economic sovereignty includes choosing trade partners based on national benefits. Burkina Faso demonstrate that import routes can actually be redesigned to align with trusted neighbors like Ghana. This cooperation actually strengthens Ghana's position as a regional trade hub, increased cargo volumes, built port experience, attracts logistics investment, and of course create employment opportunities. For Burkina Faso, diversify access routes, reduce diplomacy, and of course created negotiating leverage in regional trade discussions. The 125 billion CFA franc shift represents more than loss revenue elsewhere. Thank you so much for watching and of course staying informed on today's important regional developments. Please like this video if you haven't subscribed to this community so that you can actually stay updated always. Okay.